Yo guys, what's good? As here once again with another Exos series video. Dragon Scales and Dragon Blood. Are they positive for the game? Let's talk about it. Oh my, Dragon Blood. I was really hesitant to make a video about this. Mainly because this is one of the topics that is a really sore tooth for the community. On one hand, players with extensive rosters and or Dragon Blood units of their own usually only reply with "get good." And on the other hand, many newer players, low spenders, or simply people who are not fortunate enough to have those units are crying for nerfs. There's simply no middle ground. I consider myself still on the lower spender side, however I got extremely fortunate having pulled strong meta units. And I do know how to fight against this infuriating meta. That doesn't mean I can't objectively look at it and criticize it. Let's quickly discuss about how it works. I will try to go into more depth, so this is the guidey part of this video. As a short note, I'm not introducing new and awesome ways to counter it. This is here for you to fully understand on how Dragon Blood and Dragon Scales work, so you can adjust your playstyle around it. Let's jump into it. I usually call it Dragon Blood, but it's actually a couple components. One component is the Grade 1 passive. This is the enabler for all the following components. It will grant the 4 highest attack heroes in the same row with a Grade 1 mark. Currently only the arena limits which heroes you can put in the same row as the Dragon Emperor hero by only allowing attack and chaos in the back and support and defense units in the front. Besides Anastasia, all other Dragon Emperors are back row heroes. In all other areas, you are able to put your heroes wherever you want, thus even granting the front row with the Grade 1 marks if you haven't got Anastasia. Let's continue for now, but we will get back into this later. So, once somebody has the Grade 1 mark, they will receive a stack of Dragon Blood up to 7 times every time they are attacked. If they don't get hit for 2 turns, they lose all stacks. Now, I don't know about you, but I do a lot of friendly matches, mainly to test things out. And from what I've found out, dodge literally means that they didn't get hit, but the Dragon Blood stack goes on as regular. This might just be a translation issue or the localization team didn't want to repeat themselves, however wording is very important. In short, if they don't get attacked or take damage for 2 turns, they will lose all their stacks. Blocking or dodging is not counted into that, but that's just a side note. The big bad wolf comes up next, Wrath. Once every turn when attacked, allies marked with the Dragon Blood will counter dealing 50% damage for each Dragon Blood mark on them. This is again a big issue with translation or localization. They write attack, but it's actually every time they get attacked or receive damage. Attacks don't have to hit to trigger this. Actually, it doesn't even have to be an attack. It can be procced by several passives like counter or trust, reflect damage will trigger it, any form of damage over time either from an ability or break. I will touch on this later on again, so keep that one in mind. Lastly, we have Dragon Scale. This is probably what lets the whole passive jump out of control really quick. And I mean lightning fast. So once every turn upon taking damage, grant a barrier of 100% of your own defense for each Dragon Blood mark to all Dragon Blood marked allies for 10 turns. Obviously, the biggest offender is FC Xion because he has the higher defense than the others. But don't underestimate this. My FC Rera here has over 1200 defense. When she gets 7 stacks, you have to deal with a buffer of over 8000 points. And she's still missing 400 defense just from gear. Once leveled up to 90, she will be closer to 2000 than 1500. And we all know, a 14,000 HP barrier is tough to deal with, especially if you aren't supposed to touch the character. Now, before we bring all this together, let's take a moment to refresh our beverages and get a snack or two. And while doing that, why not use the time to also subscribe? I do a couple videos a week, including tutorials, champion reviews, or simply fun stuff. Be part of the awesome people who already joined. Enough time to refresh? Awesome. let's continue with the summary. One Dragon Emperor hero grants heroes in the same row with the Grade 1 passive. This allows them to gain Dragon Blood stacks. On heroes who don't have Wrath or Dragon Scales, this doesn't do anything, so you can freely hit them. However, if you hit somebody with those passives, aka Dragon Emperor heroes, the pain train begins. They will retaliate once a turn and grant the shield once a turn. As you might have realized, it doesn't specify their turn. It's once per turn. Doesn't matter whose turn it is, it will happen. And I think this is basically where I have an issue with this passive. Let me preface this with that I like the general concept. I like that there's a deterrent against mass AoE because it's simply not fun. I really think that this is a great booster for PvE content, which is in my opinion scaled pretty well. Wait, don't turn off. I know what you want to say. Al, have you ever tried the hard content without the Dragonblood heroes? Well, yes I have. But let's not forget that this game is out for 1 month. Are you expecting to clear all the endgame content within a month? What do you do afterwards? The game isn't meant to be finished in a month. It's supposed to take you a while, build up multiple different heroes, struggle, fight, and then get rewarded by being able to do battles on auto mode. And this is where my issues continue. Arena is usually the big offender because not a lot of people complain about how PvE content is cleared. However, I think especially with a lot of rewards being tied to PvE as well, it creates a scenario where your goal doesn't become to build up a solid team, but trying to shove in these Dragonblood heroes into every team, not thinking, just clearing. They make it so people's suggestion for farming special difficulty is, well, bring Dragonblood. I don't want to offend anybody with what I'm saying, but this is not solid advice. This is belittling people who either didn't spend the money or were simply not lucky enough to pull those heroes. I'm sorry, but it had to be said. Let's move on. In its current iteration, the mechanics leave little to no room for strategy or counterplay. If you follow PvP a little, you might have seen Dragon Emperor heroes incorporating a couple of Nature Guardian stones. The reason for that is, this is the least beneficial for the attacker. Did you know that a lot, actually almost all of the counters for Dragonblood are coming from one-shotting opponents? And now let's check out which heroes are usually recommended. Rudley, Nature. Rara, Nature. Grizzle, while not being part of the one-shotting team, her ability to blind is also considered a counter, but again, Nature. And then Asarta, the little kitty, also Nature. I just made a video about her, she's pretty cool, but that's not the point. Two of those just mentioned heroes have the counter passive, usually pretty good, but bad when against Dragon Emperors. You remember when I mentioned that Wrath will counter dealing damage? Now, guess what? The counter passive will retaliate upon taking damage. Now, let's say your hero doesn't have a choice but to hit a Dragon Emperor, which is possible since there are 6 in the game, with the 7th one coming soon. Your typical one-shots aren't as easy to execute because you immediately trigger Wrath and Dragon Scales. And if they attack one of your counter heroes, their passives kick in as well. The issue here is not so much that the Wrath can stack up to 350% damage, not that the barrier can be 700% of your defense, it's that it ramps up so quickly. Other passives don't trigger multiple times per turn. They have a cooldown, being that they only can occur once until your hero had a turn again. A simple, while probably community enraging fix would be to treat it like other passives. I have no problem getting 150% counters or 300% shields after 4 or 5 rounds. But I do have a problem when my team hasn't taken a single turn yet. However, due to passive interactions, suddenly I have to deal with 150% counters and 300% shields immediately. I do have problems when there is a single mechanic that benefits off its counters. The only proper way to deal with those heroes is one-shotting them. However, isn't that the solution to every single hero? One-shot them and then not deal with them. Now we get into the last part I wanted to share with you. passive stacking. What I mean with that is the number one reason people are rightfully so upset about Dragonblood. And that is if they are paired with Bathory. Because this takes away the only counter you had. In case you don't know, Bathory has Tranquil passive and it grants all allies with less attack than self the Tranquil mark and protects from death one time. Don't get me wrong, I really like when you can combine mechanics to create unique ways to play the game. I actually love it and it's fun to find out combinations like that. On the flip side, however, without the ability to remove passive effects, it creates tons of issues. Especially if those abilities persist past that of the passive holder. You currently can't kill a Bathory and have the rest of the team lose the benefit. You're unable to remove passive effects. There isn't any hero that could disable those effects. For those of you who played Summoner's War, you might remember that there was a huge issue that honestly still persists a little bit now, where passives can only be counted by a few rather exclusive heroes. However, those passives didn't stay on the battlefield once the hero who had them were removed. Well, to bring this topic to a close, I have to say no. Dragonblood is not healthy for the game in its current iteration. I'm not a big fan of calling for nerfs. I usually advocate for bringing other heroes up to similar levels. However, this passive isn't only severely overtuned, but also bugged because the descriptions don't match the outcome. In a case like that, a company should take the sour pill and adjust this. I believe simply only letting Dragonblood stack once the hero had a turn wouldn't be the end of the world. You would still have a strong passive that, if not dealt with properly, can severely punish you. But at least it would give us some way to play around it. And no, introducing a couple of FCs that allow you to one-shot those is not a solution. I really hope they take their time with the newly introduced Unleashed potential and make that into something that could introduce ways to deal with passives. Not only Dragonblood, but in general. With all that said, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Give a thumbs up and leave suggestions or feedback in the comments about what you think is the proper way to deal with this. Hit the subscribe button for more content, and to not miss it, click the notification bell as well. As always, it was a pleasure to have you here. I will see you in the next one, and until then, enjoy the grind.